This program is made possible by generous support from China City, with locations in Oak Harbor, Freeland, and Mill Creek, Washington, as well as these local businesses.
Now for one of the more emotional pieces. About 6 years ago, under full moon, in front of a big fire, we completed our ritual. I agreed to gift my close friend and her wife a child through surrogacy. I'd been pregnant twice and I loved it. I knew I could do it again. I had 2 sweet boys. I was done having my babies and my family was complete. My friend I'd known for 20 years. She had lived off and on with me when she was teaching abroad and helped me raise my babies with a sweet, nurturing presence. Neither she nor her wife could carry or use their eggs, and so I volunteered a possibility. We talked about it for a couple years, looked at all the possibilities, and that night we'd come to a yes to this unknown journey. But first, a womb name. Moonshine. Perfect. A homemade bootleg concoction sealed by ritual under the moonshine. So we went to the fertility clinic and we started the process. They told me to call them as soon as I started bleeding, and my friends started looking through sperm donor profiles. And then I got really fatigued. My breasts got tender. I didn't bleed. I was already pregnant by my boyfriend of just a few months, Bobby. And so we reconsidered, and he joined our Moonshine brew. We continued on with the early pregnancy. We met with the midwife. This was their first pregnancy. So I got to be in the middle of all of their questions, their fears, their anticipations, everything. They wanted to know everything I was feeling. What did it mean that color seemed brighter to me? Had I felt the baby move? How was my energy? It was so sweet to be in the midst of that with them, their surrogate. And then my friend had some medication changes. She's bipolar and had been stable for years. And her new psychiatrist recommended some changes, and they did not go well. She began to get manic and more manic. Her wife ended up calling the police to help get her to the hospital. She hit the cop. She now had a felony to her name. Things were unraveling. So after countless heartfelt conversations, Bobby and I decided that they were not ready. And we said no. And that was really hard. This was my friend who had sung and rocked my babies to sleep. And she wanted to be a mother, and I took away that dream. But we had to figure out the next safe step. This was about when the moon started waking me up, which it did a lot. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, just bathed in that clear, silver, bright light. No one else around. My emotions laid bare, and weeping at this change of events. The moon became my witness, my companion, my moonshine. At this point, I was about 5 months pregnant, and my relationship really changed with Moonshine. Before then, I'd been the house, the surrogate, and my friends were the mothers. But now I was the mother, until we figured out the next step. My relationship became much more intimate and close. We made another hard decision, and we decided to go with an open adoption. And then I entered a role I never dreamed I would be in. There I was, a 39-year-old mother of two, a good mother of two, and I was giving up my baby for adoption. It was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever been in. With my friends, I knew pretty much how they would parent, but now I was looking through profiles and pictures of strangers who wanted to adopt. I had no idea how they would parent. It was scary and hard, but we had to keep moving forward. So we did. We narrowed our choices down to 2 couples, and we contacted our social worker to meet the first couple. There we were, 2 stable adults, 4 healthy children between us, healthy pregnancy, and they said no. So we took a deep breath and moved on to the second couple. They had just called the day before to say that they'd found a birth mother in the community and they were out of the pool. And I remember at this time feeling like I was on a roller coaster in the pitch dark. And I thought this trip would be up and down a hill with a few unknown turns. But these loops, these corkscrews, these hairpin turns, I had no idea. And a part of me relaxed because I didn't know the next turn. In the meantime, another family on Whidbey was going through their own journey. Phoebe, a sweet 5-year-old girl, had succumbed to a 2.5-year battle with brain cancer. The sunshine was sucked out of her parents' lives in a way I can never, ever imagine. Sometime later, Carrie, Phoebe's mother, was at the gravesite with a mutual friend, and this friend felt intensely pulled to tell her of our story. Even though it felt bizarre, she had to. And then she showed up at my doorstep in tears, also compelled to tell me the whole story. My first reaction was, no, the timing. But that roller coaster, I didn't know the next step. I decided to stay open. This friend who I'd never seen cry showing up at my doorstep. These 2 adoptive couples vanishing out of the picture. I stayed open. Meanwhile, Carrie went home to her husband that night and told Caleb, her husband, of this conversation she had had. And he said, wow, just yesterday I had this premonition, this revealing, that a friend was going to come with us and tell us of a friend who wanted to gift us her baby. I went to my boyfriend's that night and told him of this strange conversation, that there's this couple on Whidbey and that they weren't looking to adopt. They hadn't gone through the adoption agency. Their daughter had just died. I expected Moonshine to be living further away where I would have some distance. And he listened carefully to me. And then he said, this is them, Katy. These are Moonshine's parents. And I said, how do you know? We haven't even met them. And he said, I know. And so I met them. It was a meeting of frankness, curiosity, tears, vulnerability. They were still raw in the grief of their daughter's death. I was 7 weeks away from my due date. We connected strongly and immediately. I think we kind of fell in love with each other. I remember Caleb looking me in the eyes at the end of this long conversation and saying, I think I want to do this, Katy. We let it rest. We decided to let it rest for a few days. And a day and a half later, they called and they said, it seems crazy, but yes. How can we not accept this gift of love? We want to adopt Moonshine. And Bobby and I felt exactly the same way, that it did seem crazy, and it felt totally, totally right to say yes to their love, to their gift. I remember Carrie telling me something in those weeks I was getting to know her, how she had learned to hold grief and joy at the same time. Grief knowing that Phoebe would probably die, and through all the difficult treatments. And joy in her presence, her sweetness, hope that maybe she would survive. And she said maybe I would feel those same things through my process, grief and joy at the same time. And so I went into labor under that full moon. Of course, that moon. And I gave birth in this circle of this new family. I remember the midwife placing him on my chest and feeling this intense rush of simultaneous and completely different feelings. Relief that I was done with labor and I'd given birth. Awe at his beauty. Delight in those little newborn kitten mews. Sorrow. He was no longer just mine. Gratitude for all the gifts. Fear of the unknown future. Joy in his presence. All in full measure. All at the same time. And then it came time to introduce him and gift him to Carrie and Caleb. The midwife looked at me and said, "Katy, you're the bravest woman I know." And I handed him to them. Carrie whipped off her shirt, and she and Caleb formed this sweet, sacred circle around him, just enveloping him in joy, connection, love, grief, sweetness. And he became their son. They became his parents. And now he's almost 5. His name is Cyrus. He's so sweet and fun. I see him often. He adores my boys. Carrie and Caleb love us deeply and have always treated us with absolute integrity through this unknown process, this journey. But there's something different about being his birth mother versus being my son's everything mother. He's so much the child of Carrie and Caleb, and yet he was my moonshine. And they feel like different entities sometimes. It's hard to connect the two. And so I try to find that connection. I search his features, his eyes, the same shape as mine and my boys. I look at his mouth and he looks just like my boyfriend, Bobby. I hear him say, "Huh," and he sounds just like his sister and his mother in his curiosity. He twinkles his eyes at me and I see all of his father's silliness. But when we're alone, we almost always have this moment, this sacred moment of stillness where we just lock eyes and we gaze at each other in silence. And that's when I remember. That's when I feel that moonshine gleaming right back into my soul. Thank you.